Chapter 571, Is the world round or square? There had been heated discussion among the people in this world as to what lay beyond the starry sky, and if the world had an end, what would the end look like? When StarCraft was first released in the shop, the cultivators and warriors had argued about these topics. Just like what Mr. Fang had said, they were in fact living on the planets. Although Mr. Fang stated it as a fact with his life experience and knowledge that he obtained before he traveled through space and time, no one in this world believed him. This argument was paused since Mr. Fang was busy with the release of Dungeon Fighter Online and the organization of the esports competition. Now that these tasks were finished, the system's words reminded him of the previous debate. Mr. Fang scratched his head and wondered, right, what does this world look like? The group chat that people created in QQ to talk about if the world was round or square dash. At this moment, the group members had completely deviated from the original theme. And Xuanhuan said, screenshot, today, I only got 2 epic equipment after spending a whole day killing abyss demons. They are both garbage. What an unlucky day. Nalan Hongwu said, a screenshot of a dazzling golden lightsaber. Ha 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 ha. Look at my light flame sword, blazing sun judgment plus 11, Xuanhuan Chenking, an elder of the Xuanhuan family replied, a screenshot of the champion of the F1 Dungeon Fighter Online competition losing her mind when she got an epic equipment but the internet connection was cut off, taken by a communication jade, in the new year. I wish you to have your internet disconnected, fail in every equipment reinforcement, damage in all your equipment, have a lack of colorless small crystals, and hit your daily online time quickly. LDU of the Heavenly Academy replied. Nalan Hongwu's face darkened. Sutanji said, have you guys watched The Legend of the White Snake today? Mr. Fang chimed in. Can you guys talk about the theme topic? Sutanji asked. What's the theme topic? Exasperated, Mr. Fang replied quickly. Look at the name of the group. This is an official group for science and technology discussion. The members looked at the group name earnestly. Is bean curd sweet or salty? Mr. Fang was speechless. Who changed the damn name? He immediately changed it back to, is the world round or square? The student who was on the work-study program, Li Lannuo, asked, Sir, how come you came up with this question? Mr. Fang replied, are you not a bit curious about the mystery of the world? Zongwu replied, I haven't finished killing all the abyss demons yet. Sutanji said, a screenshot of when the ending theme song of Legend of the White Snake played. Sir, will you release 4 episodes tomorrow? Green veins bulged on Mr. Fang's forehead. You guys are too lazy. Don't you have any curiosity for knowledge? Sutanji said, Sir, after you find the answer, don't forget to tell us. They were indeed a group of lazy people who would do nothing but yell awesome and play online. Gatinian suddenly said, in my opinion, to find the answer to this question with our current level of spiritual spells and science knowledge, we must spend a long time to explore, or our answer will be superficial. Now that we have the core ore of the Protoss, we might have a chance to try. Mr. Fang said, finally, we have a wise person among us. While stroking his beard, Gatinian typed the words smugly. The ancient scroll that we acquired from the Sky Relic says that all the people who ascended to heaven went in the direction of the Heavenly Abyss Sea. Heavenly Abyss Sea? Rose and Rain suddenly typed. Tang Yu chimed in. FCK. You drew out the champion. The 3 janitors who had been sneaking glances at Mr. Fang's screen from the behind exchanged a look. What are these natives up to? They had a feeling that these natives wanted to do something big. At this moment, Jessica suddenly saw the spiritual artifact attached to her belt blink. She immediately walked out the door. The Grand Heaven Hiding Palace was still hovering in the sky above Heavenly Abyss Sea. At this moment, the white-robed man was holding a strange crystal which showed the image outside the door of Origin's Internet Club. My lords, I finally got in contact with you. The white-robed man looked pleased, and then he saw the janitor uniforms that they were wearing. My lords, why are you wearing native clothes of these natives? The 3 people's faces twitched at the question. Carl quickly said in a cold voice, stop babbling. Is it your place to think for us? The white-robed man quickly bowed and replied, I was worried in the past few days since you didn't send any messages to us. We're fine. Blonde Kevin said, we encountered a small problem and will soon solve it. Besides, these natives are not as weak as we thought. You must be careful. Jessica said, we are gathering information about these natives. We've reached a critical stage, and you can't disturb us. Yes, my lords. The white-robed man bowed even lower. Another thing, Carl instructed, in a few days, these natives might send a powerful team to the area that you are in. You guys should first hide and not show yourself. We found that there are some very powerful masters among these natives, and you might not be their match. There are such powerful masters among the natives? The white-robed man looked surprised as he said, even you can't handle them, my lords. Their faces twitched. After exchanging a look with the other two, Carl laughed and said, how can they be our match? Kevin said immediately, he just escaped from us. At this moment, Gabriel and a few other people of the Ultimate West realm walked out of the door, humming the song from Legend of the White Snake to themselves. I just heard the shop owner call for you to dump the garbage, so I came to give you a heads up since I didn't see you in there. Go in now, otherwise, he will lose his temper. With that said, Gabriel and his companions walked toward their hotel. We are from the same place, and we should look after each other. You don't need to thank me. Hurry, turn it off. Carl and the other two Outlanders scrambled to run into the shop without turning off the communication. Damn it. The white-robed man in the heaven-hiding palace saw them run, and then the screen in front of him turned black. He exchanged a look with the servants around him. What had just happened? Meanwhile, Mr. Fang's technology discussion had come to an end. Mr. Fang's global travel plan was the first to be vetoed due to the inaccessibility of some extreme realm. Even if they could pass these areas, it would cost them lots of energy and time. Therefore, they came up with another plan, Spiritual Ship Ascendance Plan. They could use the great abilities of the Protoss Cursor to follow the ascendance path of the ancient times, just like the ships flying into space in the game. If they could fly into the starry sky, they certainly could see if the whole continent were round or square. They would find out if their living place was indeed a planet as Mr. Fang had claimed. Chapter 572, How come it looks like this? For some idle people, they would play any new games and watch any new TV series the moment they were released. Su Tanji was one of them. Fairy King Yun, who had become idle recently, was another. She had come here to do something for the cultivation world, but after waiting for a long time, nothing had happened. As for the brave fighters, Rose and Rain had launched her live shows, Zhu Yangxiao had established a studio for moving bricks, and as for Xiaoyu, Jiang Xiaoyu was eating her potato chips while hiding in a corner so that the despicable shop owner couldn't take them from her. The damn invaders are nowhere to be seen, and the fighters are getting idle. While feeling sad and helpless, Fairy King Yun began to watch the new TV series. She even suspected that she had made a mistake in her calculations and that the catastrophe wouldn't strike the spiritual state after all. Are you guys coming or not? Fairy King Yun murmured to herself while watching the TV series. We are here already. Jessica mumbled through her gritted teeth behind Fairy King Yun. This feeling was quite weird. For the researchers who were Artifact Master and Mechanism Masters of the Grand Factions, they would never stop their exploration of the unknown world regardless if the catastrophe struck the world or not. What were the secrets about the immortal Tao in the ancient times? Which of the worlds shown in the games and TV series were real or closer to their own world? Perhaps their world was just a simulation, just like the one shown in the Matrix. They had perceived more possible explanations for the world, and these new thoughts improved their way of thinking. People in this world said that no one could pass the Sky Mountain of the Ultimate West realm. What lay beyond the Sky Mountain? The ancient legend said that the people in pursuit of Tao all went to Heavenly Abyss Sea. What secrets were hidden in that forbidden area which was fraught with danger? Why couldn't they ascend to heaven from their own factions? Welcome to this episode of Approaching Science. I'm Lee Haran. At this moment, the big screens in the shops were showing a weird-shaped golden battle jet flying toward the heavenly abyss sea at great speed. On the bottom right corner was Li Heron's live stream studio. This is the live stream sent back by Mr. Fang. In this live stream, we'll explore the mysteries of the world in a scientific way. Now, let's ask Mr. Fang why he has a sudden interest in this question. Naturally, Mr. Fang wouldn't tell them that he had just gotten a task to open another branch shop, which was why he intended to explore another place. After all, as the shop owner, he couldn't spend all his time playing games like these lazy people. At this moment, Jessica, Carl, and Kevin were sitting on a couch. In one corner, two black-clothed figures were also solemnly watching Approaching Science, which was hosted by Mr. Fang. Heavenly Abyss Sea isn't a peaceful place. The two figures hiding in the corner whispered to each other. With these people piloting a course or battle jet, they will soon return in defeat after a few moments. Or, how come this kid went to the Heavenly Abyss Sea? The godly swords hung at the entrance yelled. Seniors, do you know the secrets of Heavenly Abyss Sea? Some disciples of the Kinkyu family noticed that these swords seemed to know something about this sea, so they immediately cupped their hands and asked the swords. Little girls, you asked the right people. Seeing many people looking toward it, the godly sword named King Ming said arrogantly, weird winds sweep across Heavenly Abyss Sea frequently. In one moment the sky is clear, and in the next moment, vicious and huge waves might surge up toward you. In one moment, the ocean is peaceful, and in the next, a sea monster might leap out and attack you. They are so powerful that they can swallow a cultivator like you guys whole. The godly sword named King Xuanhuan said. Meanwhile, on the Heavenly Abyss Sea sir, a few servants kneeled before the white-robed man and reported, to hide our whereabouts, we've cleared all the nearby sea monsters. No stupid sea monsters will come to us during the concealment. Okay. Very good. Inside the shop there's more. The black sword said, huge and pitch black holes will appear at the bottom of the sea, sucking huge amounts of water inside as if huge dragons were sucking water at the sea bottom. If you get close to them, it's extremely dangerous. It's so dangerous. Then, the shop owner and others are in mortal danger, right? The girls looked pale. In the palace hovering in the sky above Heavenly Abyss Sea Sir, we've resolved the issue of sea holes created by the spatial shards. They won't have any impact on us. Good, good. We must do the work that Carl and the other lords assigned to us. We can't allow those natives to notice our existence. Yes. Then, why don't we leave this place to avoid these natives? Or we can go to the place where Jessica and the other lords are staying. As for that, the white-robed man said, the lords don't want us to go there. I'm sure they have good reasons for that. In the Xuanhuan city shop the godly swords continued, there are more dangers than those. Horrifying black lightning bolts strike that area constantly. Ordinary cultivator would be turned into ashes if they were struck. What lightning bolts are these? How come they are so powerful? It's said that the ancient cultivators passed their tribulations in that place. And these lightning bolts are called heavenly tribulation godly lightning. Ah, so powerful. More and more people gathered around the swords, and their faces paled as they yelled, hurry and tell the shop owner to come back. That place is too dangerous. In the sky above Heavenly Abyss Sea Sir, the nearby sea area is peacefully under the control of our holy artifact Heaven Hiding Palace, and I'm sure that it wouldn't trigger any void tribulation lightning. But the space around the border of realms is still a bit vulnerable. In the Xuanhuan city shop according to the legends, that place is the origin of Heavenly Tao and the birthplace of Hundun. TL note, Hundun means primordial and central chaos in Chinese cosmogony. Actually, it is this amazing. Is it the legendary Holy Land? The people around the godly swords clucked their tongues in amazement. In the sky above Heavenly Abyss Sea. Okay. Now, no one will see that we are hiding here. The white-robed man waved his hand impatiently while mumbling to himself, I hope that the heavenly Tao of this world won't slack off and fall apart. What is going on? the energy stored in this holy artifact might run out. Sir, the crack that we traveled through to jump between. They are coming. Some people are coming. We have no time to repair it now. Keep hiding. At this moment, the super expedition team consisting of Mr. Fang, Xuanhuan, Zhongwu, and other cultivators and warriors of the spiritual state finally arrived at Heavenly Abyss Sea. Above the Heavenly Abyss Sea, the endless blue sky was dotted with white clouds. Occasionally, some white birds flew across the ocean. The blue ocean had gentle ripples on its surface. Please watch the visuals sent back by Mr. Fang. Li Haran, the host of Approaching Science, said at this moment, the blue sky and cyan ocean are so pretty. Is this really the legendary Forbidden Zone? Oh, is this the so-called Heavenly Abyss Sea? The audience was surprised. The godly swords who had been busy describing the dangers in Heavenly Abyss Sea scratched their heads. How come it looks like this? Chapter 573. This isn't scientific. At this moment, the Heavenly Abyss Sea was clear with a gentle breeze, which was totally different from the dire situation described by the godly swords. The people who were not playing online all sat in the lounge area to watch Mr. Fang's live stream named Approaching Science. Info note: Approaching Science is a documentary film program of China's CCTV 10. It was first broadcast on June 1, 1998 and became a popular program of CCTV. The subjects of the program include biology, archaeology, psychology, etc. This ocean doesn't look any different from any other sea. Mew King murmured while gazing at the big screen in puzzlement. Little girl, don't let the peaceful appearance of the Heavenly Abyss Sea fool you. The two black-robed figures who seldomly spoke snorted. In a little while, black winds might come up and put all these people in danger. Really? Jiangxi Oyu munched on potato chips while watching the live stream. After she finished half a bag of the potato chips, she asked, "Where are the black winds?" "They will come later." Then, she finished the remaining potato chips in the bag. Glancing at the peaceful ocean, Mr. Fang asked, "You mean the ancient immortals all ascended from this place?" Xuanhuan said, "According to the records in the ancient scrolls, they seemed to have all came here without exception." Mr. Fang looked out of the window in bewilderment and asked, "Shall we fly up and have a look?" This Approaching Science is boring. The Heavenly Abyss Sea is just like an ordinary sea, Mew King said, but the legends make it sound so unusual and fascinating. Many years has passed, and many things can change in such a long time. Maybe the dangers have disappeared long ago. Instead of finding extreme dangers in the Heavenly Abyss Sea, they found that it was peaceful and quiet. With their anxiety gone, they were in a good mood. Academy Master who sat in the cockpits began to hum to himself. "West Lake is so beautiful in March." Mr. Fang was still talking on the side. "Guys, do you think we can fly to a planet if we keep going? Look, the mist is up. The wind is up." Someone suddenly yelled in the shop. "Sir, look at that. These natives. Where are they going?" At this moment, Jessica and her companions who had been drowsy while sitting on a couch suddenly jumped up. "These guys? They just flew out like this." In the mist, they seemed to see black lightning bolts piercing the void. They couldn't see the sun or the stars. It seemed like they traveled in a vortex tunnel. Where's this place? Pilot. Where's Academy Master Gu? I don't know where we are. Oh, the instruments all seem to have issues. An unknown magnetic field is detected. Are we beginning the tribulation? We're finished. Forcing to pass the tribulation without enough cultivation strength. I'll be burned by the lightning. The audience in the shop exclaimed in alarm as well. Bedlam broke out in the shop and in the jet. Jessica and her companions slammed their hands on their foreheads. The two black-robed figures exchanged a look. After traveling through a long tunnel, the jet passed through the dark void. Where is this place? The scene before them turned from an ocean to the sky above a giant, endless forest. It seemed that they had come to another world. This was a world totally different from their home world. Everyone stared at the scene before them dumbfoundedly. Then, they glanced at Mr. Fang. Dumbfounded, Mr. Fang pointed at the scene before him and yelled, This is not scientific. Where is the starry sky? Where are the cosmos and the universe? No, I was doing a live stream. How come we are suddenly in this place after flying up? How can I continue this live stream? Is this the upper realm? The immortal realm? Li Heran said. Welcome to this episode of Approaching Science. As we can see, our Mr. Fang seems to have encountered a small problem and feels like this isn't scientific. I don't think it's scientific either. In the Geocity shop, Sudanji stuffed a potato chip into her mouth and joined the fun. Does it mean that they passed the tribulation just like that? Jiangxi Oyu chimed in. Isn't this show called Approaching Science? Jessica and her companions still had their hands on their foreheads. The two black-robed figures exchanged a baffled look. Mr. Fang's live show Approaching Science continued. Where are we now? Gatinian looked back at Mr. Fang in bewilderment. Mr. Fang looked at him dazedly, thinking, how can I know? This world of yours is different from the world that I lived in before I traveled through space and time. While flying with the sword control technique, I can't go up further after reaching a certain height. But in the sky above Heavenly Abyss Sea, we flew to this place after flying up for only a short while. Did I travel through space and time again? This time, I had traveled through space and time with people of another world and even the aircraft. This is really not scientific. Wishing to stop the live stream of Approaching Science, Mr. Fang tried to explain with embarrassment on his face. We might have touched some trigger and were sent to another place. My theory has a scientific foundation. There is no need to doubt me. I think this might be. Mr. Fang froze as he said that, feeling like it was impossible to explain this situation. At this moment, Gatinian said, I think this place might be a small world. In other words, we might have stumbled through a portal and came to this place by accident. Right. I think Academy's theory makes sense. Mr. Fang agreed immediately. In today's Approaching Science, we will take you to explore the secrets of this place. Jessica looked contemptuous. Your native world is a small world. Alright. How can you guys call our world a small world? How did they go over? It's said that their Corsair battle jet is very powerful and can even detect magnetic fields. I wonder. Look at the sky. Saya exclaimed at this moment. Without thinking, Mr. Fang adjusted the camera angle so that everyone could see the world better. Sure enough, there were two suns in the sky. One was overhead while the other was setting. There are two solar systems? Mr. Fang was totally confused. This doesn't make sense. What is wrong with this world? Interesting. Luo Piling frowned. He turned around and saw Elder Andrew looking over as well. What did you find? Luo Piling nodded and said, it looks like the picture engraved on the ancient holy item in our family. I thought it depicted a rare phenomenon in the sky. How come? Sir, the energy shield of the Corsair is losing lots of energy. On the other side, Gatinian reported to Fang Chi. Mr. Fang said after a moment of pause. Today's Approaching Science ends here. See you all in the next episode. Chapter 574, The People of the Upper Realm Can Live Stream Too? After Mr. Fang bungled his live stream, people began to miss his nimble, sharp, and fancy shows in previous live streams. This time, Mr. Fang was so lame and idle that he even bungled his live stream. People began to wonder what happened to the Mr. Fang that they had known. How come boss became so lame? Jiangxi Oyu mumbled. In the past, Mr. Fang had been regarded as a grandmaster whose plays, talents, and martial arts soared everyone as he tried his best at everything. But now, he looked like everyone else who were unknowledgeable and could fail. He was no longer on a pedestal anymore. And the others didn't feel the need to look up at him all the time. I think I like the lame version. Xiaoyu murmured to herself. At this moment, even Jessica thought that they could capture this lame shop owner and tie him down before taking him back to avenge themselves. However, when she thought about it, she shivered subconsciously. Damn it. We had made the mistake by mistaking him for a lame guy. Trying to shock him. In the end, we ended up as his janitors. She began to suspect that this kid knew some things and just kept them a secret. It's natural to fail once or twice if you live stream constantly. Seeing the gazes from Xuanhuan and others, Mr. Fang remained cool as if it wasn't a big deal. At this moment, Mr. Fang saw his communication jade which was attached on his belt blink. As for why Mr. Fang could still receive messages in this place, since he could even live stream from here, it meant that Mr. Fang always had signal with him. As long as the other side also used the new communication jades, they could send messages to him through the network in the shop. Admit it, you knew our identities since long ago, right? Looking at the message from this strange ID, Mr. Fang hesitated and asked, Jessica? In the shop, Jessica felt as if she were struck, and her vision darkened. I knew it. She hadn't told him her name, but this kid had guessed that the message was from her. What are you up to? Jessica quickly sent a message to ask him. Mr. Fang answered, I'm just a shop owner. What do you think I can do? Maybe I can open the branch shop here so people can play games together. Jessica almost spewed out blood. We are enemies. Enemies. Aren't you afraid of being killed? Then, what's your mission? Fang Chi asked. I don't think our destruction will bring you anything good. Even if you want to take things from this place, you don't have to destroy everything. I can't tell you. Jessica's words oozed with the pride that was instilled in her bloodline. You natives of the lower plains would never understand. Colonization? Fang Chi asked in surprise. Suppression or slavery? Or the pure urge to destroy people different from you? Jessica looked a bit surprised, finding that this native seemed to know more than she had imagined. Your way of thinking is very dangerous, Mr. Fang said earnestly. The powerful preys on the weak. It's the survival of the fittest. Besides, don't think that the fantasy worlds in your shop are so grand. In fact, we have had such things long ago, Jessica added. The true fantasy worlds can recreate the past relics and even planes which truly existed. They are like cultivation towers and wouldn't make people fall back in terms of cultivation, unlike the fantasy worlds here which are faked to all people. Hearing her words, Fang Chi was a bit startled. And he thought, there are such awesome stuff in this world. Humphrey. Besides, your so-called live stream isn't something new, Jessica said. Many powerful fighters can cast visuals with spiritual spells when they enter these fantasy worlds. As for the battles among powerful fighters, hundreds of thousands of people can watch them through this spell. The weaker ones don't even have the right to watch. It's why we're so powerful. If she hadn't been so arrogant, this scummy shop owner would have begged for her mercy long ago. Mr. Fang widened his eyes. These people in this world can live stream too? How long have you been doing this? He asked immediately. Much longer than you guys, Jessica said with a snicker. It has a long history of development. After all, fantasy worlds were not something that people could create in a short time. But now, it's getting more popular by the day. While she said it, Jessica sat straighter subconsciously. After all, they were people from a higher plane, and these natives were inferior to them in every aspect. To make sure, Mr. Fang asked again, do you really have such fantasy worlds? And many people watch them? If I want to watch them, which direction should I go? Where are you now? Jessica was pleased with Mr. Fang's interest, hoping to stun and awe this damn native with powerful masters and the live stream industry which they took great pride in. No, their live stream was called Spiritual Spell Visual Projection. Spiritual spells and scientific technology were different, but they could achieve similar results in many areas. Through spiritual spells and spiritual artifacts, some grandmasters could create some special cultivation spaces. Even the cultivators of spiritual state could create fantasy worlds. The people in the upper realm who were in a more advanced civilization could certainly do better in this area. These fantasy worlds wouldn't trap people or do harm to anyone. Instead, they would bring great benefits to people. These people used the spiritual spell visual projection to achieve the effects of live stream, while some grandmasters combined forces to create large-scale fantasy worlds. This method was now very mature in this world. According to Jessica's introduction, this continent had a large number of spellcasters, which, in Fang Chi's mind, were like cultivators in the cultivation civilizations. There were many cultivators and warriors from the east and the west of the continent, and many grandmasters had been live streaming. Mr. Fang thought. Chapter 575, Dumb Mr. Fang arrived at the new continent. Different from the spiritual state, this world had many languages including the Oriental languages similar to the spiritual state language and the spirit energy communication method as Jessica did with Fang Chi in the beginning. Of course, they also had a special basic language, which was called the Inspiration Spiritual Spell. After being tutored by Jessica from a distance and going through a series of processes, Fang Chi and his companions no longer needed to worry about the language barrier in this place. This city is so prosperous and bustling. Aku. Walking on the streets of the city, Fang Chi sneezed and looked around with great interest. The people here mostly looked like the Westerners back on Earth, before he traveled through space and time. But there were also Oriental people with black hair and dark eyes walking swiftly on the street in cloaks. Fang Chi was astonished to see that there were all kinds of non-humans, and some of them had human bodies and beast heads. This city was very grand and was even bigger than Yuanyang City. In the city were buildings with white walls and red tiles. Clean water sprayed out from the fountain in the huge round flower bed surrounded by the meticulously pruned green hedges. The pure white stone benches on both sides of the street were spotless. However, not everyone they saw was more powerful than the grandmasters such as Gatinian. On this vast continent, most cultivators had moderate cultivation strength. But walking on the street, Fang Chi sensed several extremely powerful presences from the crowds that he passed. 2 rows of heavy cavalry wearing heavy silver armor passed them, emitting gloomy murderous spirit. Is this the much big land that Jessica mentioned? Fang Chi remembered that the top-level currency in this continent was the golden rock containing tremendous energy. He had seen it when he betted with Jessica. This rock was called a golden dragon eye, which was never seen in spiritual state. Of course, the ordinary people traded with currencies similar to spiritual stones. This was a land fraught with endless natural treasures. The vastness of the land was unimaginable, and there was more than one plane hidden in the depth of the land. In a projected screen before him, Fang Chi saw a battle between a human and a huge dragon. The huge dragon spat out streaks of flames, ice, and thunderbolts which could travel 1,000 meters without losing power. The man wearing fiery red spiritual robe chanted in a low voice, and the aura of the godly spell engulfed the whole space. Watching the scenes of the grand battle, people's exclamations erupted like a tsunami. The booming noises of the battle, the roars of the huge dragon, and the people's boisterous shouts combined and assaulted Fang Chi's ears. Ancient dragon. It's an ancient dragon. Like a yellow butterfly that was fluttering its wings, a withered leaf slowly landed on Fang Chi's shoulder. It was autumn. Autumn was a season that everything withered, and it was also the season where living beings died or went into rest and hibernation. This land didn't only have 2 suns but 2 moons as well. In a clear night, people could see 2 radiant moons, one red and one blue, up in the high sky. They looked wondrous and beautiful. High mountains rolled on the land, and many peaks reached as high as 10,000 meters. Dotted like stars in the cosmos, cities of various sizes were built on these peaks. In the distance, there was a huge mountain peak which shot up into the sky like a sharp sword. On the top of the high cliff, white ice and snow covered the land, and there was a huge white tower with a sharp tip in the center of this place. 6 golden light patterns with different shapes rotated around the tip of the tower, making the building look like a bright lighthouse. Her black hair was as thick and curly as surging ocean waves, draping over the throne that was covered by a snow-white fur and decorated by fiery red gems. This woman was wearing a pale golden silky dress which revealed a small portion of snow-white skin, and her goddess-like cold face looked as flawless as white jade. The slightly slanting ends of her eyebrows made her look even colder and haughtier. How is the expedition of the Judgment Godly Palace? The news of victory hadn't come yet, a dignified-looking, middle-aged man who was wearing silver armor replied. The Flame Inquisitor, whose nickname is Permanent Flame, the first place of the godly palace, has tamed the ancient dragon Alpha. He has shown it to the world with the spiritual spell visual projection. The middle-aged man said, "Who do you think is stronger, me or the Flame Inquisitor of the Judgment Godly Palace?" "Of course, you're stronger, Princess Your Highness." The middle-aged man said with a bow, "Princess Your Highness, did you challenge those ancient existences again?" Arrogance appeared in her eyes as she said, "It's a pity that I've never had a taste of failure." Then, her lips curled up and showed a disdainful sneer. "Is there really no one who can defeat me?" In any place of the world, autumn was always a bleak season signaling old age and decay. However, in this vast and beautiful land, flowers were still blooming everywhere. Different from other places, this huge space was full of vital energy. Strange golden lights blinked in the sky like nimble tadpoles, moving and flashing around. Their movements looked random, but they secretly followed the pattern of star movements without stopping day and night. Swain. An old man wearing a grey robe entered this ethereal space with a walking cane in his hand. In the sky, quick wind supported a man who had silver long hair and a cold, chiseled face like invisible wings. "What's going on?" His eyes filled with vicissitude, and the passage of time seemed to have come back from the endless void, shooting out godly lights that looked like lightning flashes. The grey-robed old man chuckled. "So many years have passed, and you are the same way. You are still as rude as ever to your guests." "I just came back from the state of epiphany after sensing something." The silver-haired man named Swain said mildly, "My friend, how are you doing?" The old man said meaningfully, "It's a great honor to be called my friend by the Guardian of Wind. I'm afraid that few people in this whole continent have this honor." "I heard that you traveled to the distant east and had just returned." The old man laughed and said, "Those people kept fighting for the title of number one, and I gave them a good lesson." "Ha ha ha. In the whole continent, I'm afraid that only you can defeat that holiness." "I can't say that. After all, there's always someone more powerful out there, right?" The old man said, "I don't want to show off in front of the Guardian of Wind. If you came out of this space one day, I'm sure that you will be an existence that everyone in the continent looks up to." "I'm not so sure." The silver-haired man said, "I seem to sense a very gloomy presence that is moving restlessly in a distant space, as if it is hiding in a swamp of death. Its presence is well concealed. However, I can still sense the evil in it. Perhaps it has come to the continent." Chapter 576. "Sir, deposit more money." Naturally, Fang Chi didn't want to see the regions where he had shops at engaging in a war against each other. After all, if people weren't living in a peaceful time, no one would have the leisure to play online games and watch TV series in his shops. He knew that it was only a matter of time that the force behind Jessica, Carl, and Kevin would find out about their sticky situation. From his conversation with Jessica, Fang Chi sensed that this land was so vast that even the forces behind her hadn't been able to explore the whole continent. From the information that she revealed, Fang Chi had the vague feeling that ancient existences like gods existed in this world. Although Jessica hadn't seen them with her own eyes, their existence was proved by many prophecies and miracles that happened in the past countless years. Also, the spiritual patterns between their eyebrows were distinct evidence, since these patterns were condensed from godly power. With these patterns, they could borrow power from the gods and use godly spiritual spells. When two opponents of the same realm battled, with one being an ordinary cultivator raw warrior who used ordinary spiritual essence and warrior chi, and the other being someone who could activate such horrifying power, it was obvious who would win. It wasn't a battle between rivals of the same level. It was one of the reasons why they looked down on the cultivators of the spiritual state and dared to be arrogant. Fang Chi had defeated them since he had the experience of countless battles. At least his game character had absorbed most of the power of the demons. After he achieved complete synchronization with the character, he could overpower his three opponents in terms of granular control of his energy. Combined with the great power of Evil Sword Apophis and other equipment that offered great strength, he could fight them 1 versus 3. If Mr. Fang had been a newbie soulbender, he would have been defeated without a doubt. Among these Outlanders, Carl was the strongest, but he was only a vanguard general. Fang Chi could imagine the great power of the Judgment Godly Palace, the force behind them. Fortunately, Mr. Fang was here to open a shop, and he wasn't an invader who would arrogantly claim to destroy this world. Therefore, he wasn't worried that someone would come to him and beat him senseless like what he did to the 3 Outlanders. Burp. Jessica tossed down the broom and belched uncontrollably with a bottle of Coke in her hand. I drank a whole bottle already. Get me a bottle of iced red tea. Then, she took out a strange purple crystal and paid for it. After I return, I'll capture this despicable shop owner and force him to make red iced tea for us each day. Jessica said with a snort. Her lips curved up when she imagined the scene in which Mr. Fang served her tea and massaged her back. Her mood lightened at the thought. We must be cautious. There are many traps and mechanisms in the shop. Kevin said in a low voice, while we are here, we can gather more information and see what powerful and mysterious force is behind this shop. Obviously, he remembered his failure to escape from the window and door after trying to break them for a whole night, and thus he was very cautious. On the other hand, they didn't want people to know about their humiliating experience, so they considered how to negotiate their release with Mr. Fang while gathering information about the shop. We must prepare for the invasion of the Outlanders. Gutinian looked grim. Since we came to their world through the heavenly abyss sea, they can one day go to our spiritual state through the same portal. If that happens, the spiritual state will be in danger. Fang Chi turned serious as this moment as well, since he had lived in the deserted sea realm for a long time and could be considered as half a native. We must get prepared. Fang Chi now clearly understood that the invaders came from the force called the Judgment Godly Palace. Although he didn't know the status of this force in the whole continent, he knew that it didn't represent all the forces on this land. Of course, there might be other forces coinciding with the Judgment Godly Palace in terms of missions and strategies, which was a factor that Fang Chi must put into consideration. I plan to return to the spiritual state today and begin the preparations. What's your plan, Mr. Fang? Gutinian didn't plan to drag this on. I plan to find a peaceful spot to open the branch shop while experiencing the life and customs in this place. I'll keep you guys informed and message you when I detect something, Fang Chi said. Okay, sounds good. In fact, under the suppression of the powerful upper realm, the fates of the cultivators and warriors in places such as the spiritual state, deserted sea realm, and ultimate West realm didn't depend on Fang Chi but themselves. Fang Chi alone couldn't determine their fates. After all, Jessica was correct in one thing: the powerful preyed on the weak, and only the fittest would survive. One had to admit that some things could unite all people. Hatred and conflict of interests were nothing in front of such issues. The cultivators of Half City were not good friends with their counterparts in the big factions of the Morning Star Sea realm. But now they had to work together and be cooperative on the surface. Darjin and the Ui Taoist Alliance had been enemies with the Yundian Upper Realm and the two Saint factions respectively, but none of them had conflicts with the cultivators of spiritual state. The two figures hidden in black robes were now sitting in a corner of the shop. Should we? Of course. The big man wearing a black cloak said bleakly while he gazed at the jade tablet engraved with 2 characters Liuotan in his hand. Time flows by slowly, and the past feels like a dream. I hope your immortal souls will bless us and help us obtain victory this time. So many years have passed. Now, we are going to face the enemies that they had once faced. How is the demonic energy in your body? The black-robed man asked in a low voice. The woman frowned slightly and replied, I can hear the demon's whispers occasionally, just like how it is in that world. The world in the game. The power contained in this advancement contract is perfect. Now I have the strength of stigmata, and I'm not afraid of demons. Besides, I think I can condense a seed for demonic energy. With aid from that world, I think you can soon obtain your advancement as well. With this power, perhaps awakening is no longer so far away from us. Then, Let's go to that world and study it to obtain more inspirations. Let's use up the fatigue points and then join their discussions. Let's go. If I get a piece of good equipment, I'll treat you to Coke. Should we reinforce the equipment to level 14? I remember that the prize coupon doesn't have a restriction on the reinforcement levels. My goodness. You're right. We can't stop at 14. We must make it to 20, sir. Deposit more money in my card. Chapter 577, Resident Evil 2. Regardless of what you learn, whether it was martial arts or combat techniques, the fundamental skills were indispensable. The sword techniques that were powerful enough to hack open mountains and rivers originated from the most basic hacking movements. The grandmasters who were sweeping across the whole continent had gone through the same basic training when they were young. Only on a solid foundation can tall buildings stand still. Therefore, don't be surprised if you see someone knocking down a huge dragon with a rusty iron sword or someone easily battling a heavily armored fighter with bare fists. It was because these people were truly grandmasters. If you're confident in your strength, you can pick up a tree branch from the ground and make it the best weapon in the world. Regardless of where they were, what nation they were in, what kind of power they used, and how talented they were, cultivators and warriors must put great efforts in the training of basic skills. Even on this land that was rumored to have gods, people believed that basic skills were important. In fact, the people here put even more emphasis in basic skill training than anywhere else that Fang Chi had been to. Big and small nations dotted the land like dazzling stars in the sky or precious stones in a mine, making it look like that the continent was wearing a fancy robe. Among all the nations, the Morning Light Empire that had the surging Kanglan River and misty Yin Yun Spring, which symbolized life, was the most beautiful pearl on this continent. This beautiful and rich nation enjoyed the reputation of the nation of skills. This nation put the greatest emphasis on fundamental skills. Although other nations valued fundamental skills as well, the people in this nation put much more time and energy in basic training than the warriors and mages of other nations. They had complete martial Dao mystical realms and spiritual spells mystical realms for not only junior warriors and mages but masters as well. The latter group came into these realms to do some special training with suppressed cultivation strengths. Perhaps before entering these mystical realms, many people had the misunderstanding that the basic cultivation mystic realms were only useful to beginners and could be discarded after one's cultivation strength grew higher. However, after entering these realms, the foreigners who came here to cultivate would soon change their minds. These realms welcomed warriors and mages from all places. If you were lucky, you might even encounter the legendary elves in this nation. These cultivation mystical realms were treasures of the city which was situated by Kanglan River. People passing this area could hear groups of warriors in 2 or 3 discussing combat techniques. With these techniques, they battled with dangerous magical beasts, hunted for top-quality fur and higher-level magical beast crystals, which was the livelihood for many people. These realms were not open 24 hours per day. During the night, even the warriors and mages enthralled by these realms were reluctant to disturb the tranquil atmosphere of this city. On the gravel-paved streets of this ancient European-style city thronged crowds from all over the world. This was a perfect capture of the scenery of this city. These cultivation mystical realms all belonged to the Alchemist Union, and they had the highest travel flow. Several young men and women with blonde or brown hair had just finished cultivation. While wiping sweat off his foreheads, an innocent-looking young man with freckles was in high spirits. Did you know? Earlier in the cultivation mystical realm, I defeated a grey wolf which was a level 2 magical beast alone. A level 2 magical beast. It seems that my scores this term will be beyond outstanding. I think I can adventure into the Sunset Forest, he said excitedly. It was clear that these young people were very interested in unknown and novel stuff. They were drawn toward it whenever they heard about mercenaries coming back from the Sunset Forest with bags full of magical beast furs, alchemical herbs, and rare minerals. Grey wolves appear in groups inside the Sunset Forest. I hope you won't wet your pants if you encounter them. A brown-haired young man teased him. Right. It's said that some senior students sneaked into the Sunset Forest and encountered dozens of grey wolves. If a group of mercenaries didn't pass by, they wouldn't have made it back. Is it really so horrid? Through the door of the shop, Fang Chi could see a few Oriental people with black hair and dark eyes mingling in the crowds. It was said that they came from another nation in the distant east. Of course, Fang Chi used these words to describe his own background as well. The small shop had a brand new and spotless outlook. With only about 100 computers, the shop was neat and quiet. Outside the shop was a round intersection connecting streets with bustling crowds. Through the door, Fang Chi could see the huge traffic and the giant flower bed in the center of the intersection. On the giant flower bed was a huge statue of a tall man lifting a long sword. It was a busy area that was good for business. To Fang Chi's surprise, after he opened the shop, the prize he got was the game, Resident Evil 2. He thought it through after a moment of consideration. After all, most people in this world were ordinary, and the power of crowds couldn't be underestimated. To spread the internet all over the world, it wouldn't be wise if the shop only provided things that interested the few high-level warriors and grandmasters. He would have to nurture the young flowers with the very basic skills. Yes, nurture. Mr. Fang thought that this was a good word to describe what he would do. In the past, whenever he opened a new shop, there would be all the movies and TV series. But this time, the new shop had only one movie, Resident Evil 2. Together with the game, the shop offered only 2 items. Origins Internet Club. What a strange name. Look, there's a new shop here. When did it open? As usual, most people would show interest in a shop that they didn't know anything about. Driven by curiosity, these young people walked into the shop to see what business the shop was running. Having just come out of a cultivation mystical realm, these young people walked into the shop and found that the presence inside was mystical and totally different from other shops. Even though the plants and decorations inside the shop matched the city's style, the square-shaped objects that looked like magic items gave them a novel feeling. On the counter hung the certificate from the Alchemist Union and the business certificate. Everything showed that it was a legal and formal business. On the small blackboard was written, Resident Evil 2 Cultivation Mystical Realm, 10 magic crystals for activation. Resident Evil 2 Movie, 8 magic crystals for activation. Underneath were the prices of items such as iced red tea and Coke. Computer time is 2 magic crystals per hour. Resident Evil Cultivation Mystical Realm? They looked baffled. What kind of cultivation mystical realm is this? We've just come out from the Sunset Forest mystic realm of Alchemist Union after killing a grey wolf. Don't try to fool me. What is this thing? Chapter 578. How come there is such an Oriental man? Such an eyesore. Seeing the young people walking into the shop, the man standing beside the flower bed outside the shop said with displeasure. This man had short blonde hair that was neatly combed back, and he carried a big sword on his back while wearing a shiny suit of armor. What is it? Did someone mess with you, Big Sword Crete? Beside him, a lean and short man whistled as his fingers played with a small and delicate dagger. Mr. Fang had opened his shop in the busy section of the city. Nearby was the Mercenary Union, and Alchemist Union wasn't far away as well. The blonde warrior pointed at the shop and said in resentment, I mean that Oriental man who came from nowhere. Ah! The short man snickered and dragged on his voice as he said flippantly, an Oriental man, the one who went to the Alchemist Union this morning? Did he offend you? This guy doesn't know his limits. He set several new records in the low-level mystic realms. The blonde man carrying the big sword looked at the shop sulkily and said, I wonder which wealthy family he comes from. He dares to open a cultivation mystic realm in this place. His moves seem to be quite fancy. And I heard that Fiery Rose in the Union is fond of him. I remember that you had set some of the records he broke, right? Greed. He doesn't have any respect for his seniors, which is indeed infuriating. Humphrey. He is showing off his combat techniques blatantly since he isn't weak. Should we? The short one whispered, give this foreigner a lesson. A few customers went in. Let's Frighten them out of the shop. Ruin his reputation. Good idea. Give him a taste of the power of our Golden Sunlight Mercenary Group. Meanwhile, in Fang Chi's shop. What is this Resident Evil 2 cultivation mystical realm? The brown-haired young man with freckles looked around the shop curiously and said, "This shop looks strange. So expensive." The green-eyed girl beside him exclaimed when she saw the prices. 2 magic crystals for 1 hour. What were magic crystals? They were crystals condensed from the energy in magical beasts' bodies. Only level 2 magical beasts could have a low chance of producing the lowest level magic crystals, which made these crystals very valuable. With its pure energy, 1 magic crystal was equal to 10 unpurified magic ores. Obviously, this price was higher than that of ordinary cultivation mystical realms. In this nation which put great importance on combat techniques, cultivation mystical realms were available to most disciples. These mystic realms were low-leveled and easy to make as the technology matured. They were affordable to most disciples who intended to become warriors and mages. However, this new shop was even more expensive than the low-level cultivation mystical realm built by people such as the vice president of the Morning Light Empire branch of Alchemist Union. The latter had been in business in the city for many years. So expensive? They had wanted to try it, but they got indignant seeing the high prices. "Let's go," the green-haired girl said. "It's so expensive. I hope the shop owner lives his life with his magic crystals." With a pout, she went out of the shop before others. Is this cultivation mystical realm more powerful than the Sunset Forest? The freckled young man followed her out. When they looked around, they saw many people gathering before the shop. "I heard that this shop offended the Golden Sunlight Mercenary Group." Some spellcasters wearing black cloaks stood outside the shop. "He's new to the city, but he has a talent for offending people. He can mess with many people. But why did he choose them? He's just a little guy. Do you really want to play pranks on him?" Behind the blonde man named Crete stood a woman who was wearing a black mage cloak, and she asked with a playful smile on her face, "I just want to play with him." The blonde man also had a playful and teasing smile on his face. "Okay then." A short dark red magic staff slid out of the woman's sleeve. With a light wave of the magic staff, the fountain that was shooting out water toward the flower bed dashed toward Fang Chi's shop. Surprisingly, the water from the fountain turned colorful like paints. In the blink of an eye, the snow-white walls of Fang Chi's shop were dyed in many colors, and the shop front looked like a wet chicken that was just taken out of a bucket of paint. Their warriors who were about to enter the shop to check it out paused their steps. Ha 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 ha. The crowd instantly laughed. However, in the next instant, the pedestrians on the street, including the blonde warrior Crete and that woman, stopped laughing. The place fell silent. They saw the paint slide down from the walls and turn fainter until it became thin streams of water. More surprising was that the water seemed to give a shower to the small building, turning the slightly yellowed walls pristine white. With the remaining dust washed off, the tiles on the ceiling looked spotless and translucent. Exclamation mark. Try again. Put more effort in it. I just don't believe it. When the water sprayed to the building, the audience widened their eyes. The water drops turned into white mist as if they were evaporated by some unknown heat source, engulfing the small shop in an ethereal white fog. This place looked like a shop of the immortals. Awesome. Excellent. The young people who had just come out of the shop stood outside and exclaimed with hands covering their mouths, and disbelief appeared in their eyes. Not only the blonde man but the woman who cast the spell froze. What is going on? Mr. Fang frowned and murmured, "What's happening outside?" He strode out of the door. "He's coming out. Get ready. This time, we must humiliate him in front of everyone." "Don't worry. I set up a small spiritual spell on the ground. It will be great to see so many people witness his humiliation." At this moment, the door of the shop opened, and a young man flew out stepping on a silver sword beam. With mist surrounding the shop, the figure flying out while stepping on the sword beam looked like an immortal to the people outside the door. "Hello, everyone. Mr. Fang greeted them friendly. "Ah, this Oriental man is dashing. Wow, cool." All the people of the upper realm who were standing on the street were stupefied by the sight. Joseph. The young people who had planned to leave due to the high prices said, "CIA, shall we go back and try it?" "Ah, the shop owner is so cool." The girl with green hair and green eyes had stars in her eyes. "Let's go and try the new mystic realm in the shop." "Well, should we go in and have a look?" The mages who were here to watch the drama at the door hesitated for a second before walking into the shop. "Let's go as well." Some warriors carrying heavy weapons walked into the shop too. Ugh. The blonde man carrying the big sword was silent. The short man stammered, The female mage didn't say anything. Silence fell on them. After a long while, they scratched their heads. Hee ha ha, hi. Chapter 579, New Difficulty Levels, New Challenges. The white and transparent grand hall looked as if it were carved out of a giant piece of crystal. In one glance, it was clear but bottomless like a deep spring. "Princess, your highness." The middle-aged guard kneeled on one knee. "Is there anything interesting that happened?" A woman sat on a tall throne made with crystals and precious stones. Her feet rested on the pedestal which was as high as the guard's head. This girl looked to be about 19 years old. The skin revealed by her sleeveless ice blue long dress was whiter than snow. With her hands in silk gloves and resting on her lap, she looked dignified and elegant like a statue of a goddess. With her youthful looks, it was hard to connect her to that legendary existence. "Yes?" Her gaze lowered to him coldly. The guard immediately answered. "The information from the Judgment Godly Palace shows that the vanguard general and army that they sent to attack that plane seemed to have been captured." "Oh, in a barbaric plane?" At this moment, the existence sitting on the throne showed some interest. The Judgment Godly Palace seemed to have existed on this land for a long time. Their presences could be seen everywhere in this world. They spread their beliefs all over the world. In fact, they had members inside many nations. It was one of the largest powerhouses in the complicated power system on this continent. A man wore a milky white priest robe decorated with the pattern of a strange hexagonal flame. A huge dragon with crystal-like silver scales lay beside him, sitting on the highest position in the grand hall. His head was on the same level of the huge dragon's head, looking down at the mortals like a god. The presence that he emitted was so hot that it could suffocate anyone who came close to him. In contrast, his eyes were as cold as ice. "God said that flames will burn up all sins," he said slowly. According to the records in the Godly Palace, this man who looked to be about 30 years old with dazzling handsome facial features had once served the god. God said that anyone who betrays the glories of God will be judged and punished. Such an existence stood at the top of the continent. Carl and his two companions hadn't expected the Judgment Godly Palace would know about their capture so soon. After all, as the Flame Inquisitor, he had his own means and channels that were unknown to others. The Vanguard General and his two companions are elites of the Godly Palace. Two rows of people stood neatly before the Flame Inquisitor. The people in one row wore silver armor while the people in the other row wore white priest robes. Only a handful of people standing in the very front wore red robes and red armor, a sharp contrast from the rest. Each of them emitted a horrifying presence. The further ahead they stood, the greater the presence they emitted. Their expressions were cold, but their eyes had heat in them. "I'm sad that some of our people have discarded their godly patterns and betrayed the glory of God. Please release the holy flames and purge their sins." One white-robed priest bowed and said. They talked as if they could decide people's lives with one word. "No." The white-robed man who looked as holy as a god said, "I think they only submitted and behaved against the law due to suppression. They still have a chance for redemption. The people who dragged them down should be purged by the holy flame." The haughty, godlike man said, "I'm willing to lead the godly punishment army to execute the godly punishment." This time, the man standing in the foremost opened his mouth and spoke. He wore bright red armor engraved with a golden hexagonal flame pattern. and in the center of the flame was a holy hammer. Only 6 people in the Grand Hall wore such armor. They were members of the Judgment Night Legion. Each of them possessed great strength unimaginable to mortals. You shouldn't have to undertake such a trivial mission, the existence sitting on the high pedestal said calmly. It's only a small task to destroy a barbaric plane. A man wearing a golden robe walked up. I think the Thornflower family and Flamebird family who serve our god are willing to do the job. Sitting on the extremely tall pedestal, the Flame Inquisitor nodded slightly. The people who lured God's children and made them fall should be punished most severely. Let that person of the Darkwing Night Legion do the job. Aku. Mr. Fang suddenly sneezed and thought, who's thinking of me? At this moment, he was managing the new shop. With all his attention focused on how to nurture the new flowers, he was oblivious to the hidden currents after having a new goal. He had no idea what was going on. Wow! The young people had gotten online, and they found that the computers in the shop were totally different from their experience in the traditional cultivation mystical realms. Are these magical items made by the Oriental spellcasters? The freckled young man was Joseph, and the green-haired and green-eyed girl was CIA. It was evident that they were amazed by these Oriental-style magic items. In fact, hand-to-hand combat techniques were not low-level skills. They were only weak when used by weak people. There were differences between techniques, large differences. However, the simplest fundamental techniques usually contained the greatest potential and variations. The monster systems in Resident Evil 2 was larger and more complicated than that in Resident Evil 1. Since the game simulated the real world, even soldiers of special forces couldn't battle with such monsters with their bodies if they didn't have powerful close-range combat techniques. The system remake of Resident Evil 2 was different from Resident Evil 1. It had 3 difficulty levels for players to choose, and each level required different levels of combat techniques. In the basic difficulty, the players could choose Leon and Claire. At this stage, Leon was only a new recruit in terms of combat techniques. Although Claire had learned some combat techniques and shooting skills from Chris, she was still a university student and not proficient with these skills. In the challenge difficulty, the players could choose Chris and Ada whose strengths didn't need more description. In the ultimate difficulty, the players were equipped with only 1 dagger and 3 herbs. If you passed this difficulty, you probably would know the true meaning of granular control. Chapter 580, Do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to live for real? The new shop only offered Resident Evil 2 to the players, but it was released at the same time in the other shops, including the Jua City shop, the Half City shop, and the Yuan Yang City shop. Are you finally up? Mr. Fang has gone to the Outland. Oh. Sutanji walked into the shop groggily. Recently, they had been discussing a spiritual spell named Super Railgun in the research group chant, and they talked late into the night. In fact, they had begun to think and tried to create this spiritual spell as early as when they first saw the ghost guns. With the spiritual spell of transforming lightning into threads, they could study the coil guns. Of course, they did more than discussing it. For example, at this moment, Sutanji sat on the couch with a bowl of instant noodles in one hand and a pink iPhone communication jade in the other. It still had the face of a cute cat printed on the back. Ding dong. Ha. The visual that the communication jade showed was a flat-chested girl humming a song, and the title was a certain scientific railgun. Master, what are you watching? It's a story about a girl firing the railgun. Since she could only purchase the framework of some spiritual spells in Xone after watching this, she had to watch it and enjoy it. During breakfast, she watched 1 episode of this anime with her disciples. Perhaps only when they ate instant noodles in the shop could they enjoy a moment of peace. After all, they were threatened by the permanent existences from that unknown world. My job is to protect the continent. How can I be so lazy and idle here? Or, the shop released a new game. What new game? Sutanji immediately turned her head to the voice. Resident Evil 2. Sutanji sat back down while pouting. Resident Evil 2? What is fun about that? It has a low power system. Anyway, I can't really go and try to develop the T-virus and toss it into the home of the Outlanders. right? Also, it is impossible to produce such a thing. I'm better off watching my Railgun Girl anime. While watching the anime on a couch, she sent a message to Mr. Fang on QQ. Sir, how come you released this new game? Husky's disdainful face. Mr. Fang replied, why don't you play it? Sutanji asked, strange. Why should I? Sitting in the new shop, Mr. Fang chose a meme from the QQ meme collection and sent it to her. Do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to live for real? Under the question were two options. The first was, yes, and the second was, okay. Sutanji stared at the screen in a daze. She almost spat out a mouthful of blood onto the screen, and she felt frustrated and wanted to beat up Mr. Fang. How can I choose from these two options? Do you want to hear a story? Mr. Fang asked. A story? It felt like an adult was trying to calm down a child. Sutanji thought for a second and replied, I, a fairy, will give you face and listen to you. Then, Mr. Fang told her about a world named Terror Infinity. After watching The Matrix, Sutanji didn't find the weird concept of Terror Infinity very hard to understand. Oh. Hearing only part of it, Sutanji jumped up and asked, do you mean that I can open the genetic lock if I play Resident Evil 2? You can only do it in the ultimate state, Mr. Fang added. Quickly turning off her communication jade, Sutanji got up and murmured, we can practice ultimate movements and techniques in Resident Evil. I'm going to play it. She went online cheerfully. Mr. Fang froze. I was only telling a story. I didn't say that it was real. Hey, how come you're playing Resident Evil? In the group for chat for the Super Railgun, the members were puzzled when Sutanji announced that she would try Resident Evil 2. This game couldn't meet the high demands of these grand cultivators and high-level warriors. It was for the low-level young people to play. Then, Sutanji posted a meme in the group. Do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to live for real? Then, she told them about Terror Infinity. FCK, such a thing exists. Me. I want to play it, too. A member with the profile picture of a big white deer had slipped into the group. The deer wanted to learn the railgun spiritual spell, and it even wanted to open the genetic lock. It definitely lacked a good understanding of itself. I want to play it too. Lol, I joined the fun as well. Compared to the players in the old shops who lacked an understanding of themselves, the players in the new shop were much better, not needing Mr. Fang to tell them a story about life's meaning. These people in this world just paid and entered the game. Oh, this cultivation mystical realm is so different. The brown-haired young man yelled, I've turned into another man. My name is Leon. The young girl with green hair also exclaimed, I'm Claire, I have matured. Can I drink a bit of wine now? The blonde man named Big Sword Crete, who had caused trouble outside the shop, entered the game as well. What good stuff can this small shop have? It must be a basic mystical realm of the lowest level. Watch me, I'll kill all the beasts in the realm and break all the records in the shop. After entering the game, the players saw a city engulfed in a weird atmosphere and darkness. The prosperous city with skyscrapers and shops didn't even have a single light on. It was really strange. Having just graduated from the police academy, Leon drove to the police office on his first day of work. This mystical realm looks weird. While watching the opening cinematics, the Outlanders put down their virtual reality headsets and exchanged a look. They all sensed the creepy atmosphere in the game. After putting virtual reality headsets back onto their heads, they seemed to hear staggering steps in the darkness. At this moment, they officially entered the game. Where's my chi? Where's my power? How come I turn into an ordinary person? The blonde mercenary Crete yelled when he saw humans with dirty blood on their pale faces staggering toward him. FCK off, you damn wastrels. Crete quickly kicked the first zombie on the chest. However, he didn't notice that the corpse lying on the ground suddenly opened its eyes. During the interlude cinematics, Leon had stopped by this corpse to check it. It bit my leg. How can this person be biting other people? Meanwhile, Screams sounded in the shop. How come this thing can't be killed? Ah, blood was everywhere on the screen. After exiting the virtual reality mode, these people stared at the screen and watched as the bodies of their game characters were eaten by the zombies. This fear made their hair stand on end. On this day, these outlanders were struck by the fear of being overwhelmed by zombies.